The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good morning, depending where you are around the world. This is Stephen Job with DNS Made Easy and Constellix, and I'm excited to present to you the Optimizing Multiple CDN Architecture with DNS Load Balancing webinar this afternoon. I'm going to give another minute here while some more attendees are showing up. This is actually one of our largest webinars that we've been presenting as of recently. We're looking to surpass the Super Bowl numbers from 2 nights ago, and I see more people are just attending right now and still signing in. So I'm going to give another 10-20 seconds here, then we'll start. All right, excellent. All right, I still see some people still trickling in. We're excited to show them. Once again, we're going to go through this webinar, and like I usually do, I'll do a recap conference or a recap video that we'll put up on YouTube to kind of go through the whole entire features of the webinar as a recap part. This webinar, obviously, it's a lot of question and answers. We're basing this based upon all the support tickets and sales requests we've received over the past few years, especially the last few months. And so I'm excited to kind of answer a lot of those questions now. If you feel like you have any questions along the way, though, feel free to hit us up, and you can put them right into the GoToWebinar chat portal, asking questions. Later on, you can always open up a ticket with us at the same time, or you can ask. A lot of people prefer social media as well. So once again, like I'm saying, my name is Stephen Job. I'm the president and founder of DNS Made Easy and Constellix, and we're going to be going through several things today to talk about. If you ever want to reach out to me personally, please do. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn and chat and talk. And as many of you are probably aware, I will respond to you. And I'm really excited about the products and services we have. And if you ever have any questions or concerns, or you have any features that you'd like to have implemented, always feel free to reach out to me, and I will love to talk to you. So what we're going to learn today is we're going to discover what a multiple CDN architecture looks like, why it can be used. We're going to talk about some of the reasons people have and have not used multiple CDNs. We're going to talk about how DNS itself works with a multiple CDN infrastructure. We're going to talk about our internet traffic optimization, which is a big part of Constellix. We're going to have a quick little demo, and we're going to open it up to some questions and answers. So I want to start off with a quick poll right now, and I want to currently ask, do you currently use a CDN? If you have, let us know. If not, but you plan on it, let us know, or if you have no intention to. Now, as I go through the webinar today, I'm going to be talking a lot about things that are in Constellix, which is the newer service offered by our company. But I know a lot of users online are also from using our legacy DNS Made Easy, which is still going to be going on for years and years and years. And I'm going to explain to you why Constellix may be a better infrastructure or a better service provider for companies that are looking to do multiple CDN infrastructure. And I'm going to answer a little bit of that right now. Is the main reason why is DNS is still an RFC-based DNS infrastructure, where we're kind of basing it all on those DNS RFCs that were written in the 1980s. And when you're talking about multiple CDN infrastructure, you're doing a very unique sort of traffic distribution with your DNS queries, and that goes outside of RFCs. So as you are all aware, with Constellix, we wrote our own name servers to handle queries differently. So not only are we doing them much more efficiently, so our price per query is actually a little bit cheaper if you look at it, if you have really, really large domains, we also give you a really great optimization for geo-DNS and distributing traffic and stuff like that. So as we go through this webinar, feel free to ask as many questions as you want, and I'm going to try to hit up as much of them as we can at the end of it. But I just want to give you a quick rundown now why I'm talking a little bit more about Constellix. I am DNS Made Easy, but I will mention DNS Made Easy several times as well, since we have several hundred users just on the DNS Made Easy platform itself. So first of all, a CDN, Content Distribution Network, right? We all understand what that means or why you'd want it. That means you want to serve your content fast, right? You just don't want to host it out of one server in one location where it's fast for the people regionally there, but when they're trying to access that information in sorry about that, guys. So I didn't realize I was still showing the main. I didn't realize I was still showing the main thing. So if I look at this, about 50% of you are currently using CDNs, and about the other 50% haven't or will plan on doing it soon, but the larger majority of them are planning on using it very soon. So that's really important to know. So, yep. So what I want to show here is what we're going to learn about the multiple CDN. So you can see a CDN is a content distribution network serving your content really fast. So regionally, it's not just going to be fast from where your web server is hosted, but all around the world, you want your content to be distributed fast. Now, what are some other reasons to use a CDN provider? Well, a lot of CDN providers integrate DDoS mitigation with it, right? Your content's already going through their servers. They already need to mitigate all this content for them, and you're automatically going to get DDoS protection. You also have WAF, right? The web application firewalls and stuff like that. That's good for PCI compliance and all these other reasons that a lot of people are using some of these CDN providers that we're going to talk about today. So you can get DDoS, WAF, PCI compliance, everything, and faster load times, all with your CDN provider. Now, the biggest question is, how do you use all these different CDN providers, and how can you use the best one that you want to? And that's where it really gets complicated. So when you start using multiple CDNs, we're going to start combining the strengths of all the different CDN providers, right? Some CDN providers may be faster in different regions around the world than others, right? We're going to get the redundancy, right? Not one CDN provider I've known has had 100% uptime regionally around the world all over the place, right? I mean, the amount of uptime that DNS Made Easy has had historically, and now Constellix has had historically, is really focused on DNS services. We've done, the highest uptime in our service industry, right? We have 100% uptime for the last 8 years. We have the fastest load times on all major markets around the world. We really focus on the DNS piece. So how do we start leveraging the performance of the DNS Made Easy and the Constellix network with some of the better CDN providers out there? And how do we do this and get the diversity so you're not locked into only choosing one CDN provider? As many of you guys are aware, you don't have to choose the most expensive CDN provider to get the best performance, right? Just like in DNS services, we have still competitors these days that offer DNS services. I saw an invoice that was $84,000 a year for DNS, and we're offering that same product in DNS Made Easy for $59.95 a year. And it's the same thing with CDN providers. You don't have to choose the most expensive CDN provider in the world in order to get the best performance. So when you start doing diversity, and you can try out different CDN providers, and you can start doing it on cost basis and which one works best for you, that's going to give you the leverage you need for your organization to grow the fastest. So another quick question I want to ask, and this is for the people who actually have used CDNs before, or if you don't, you can say I don't use a CDN, is have you been affected by slow CDN performance? Is it something that happens often? Is it something that you use that happens all the time? Let me a quick thing so I can kind of tailor what I'm going to talk about. Let me give a couple more seconds over here. So as we're talking about different CDN performances, it's important to know that when a CDN starts performing poorly, where is it performing poorly from? Is it performing poorly just from your region? Is it performing from where you notice it, or where your users are around the world? Which is also important, is where your users are located. All right, so I'm going to close out this poll here. I think everyone's got their votes in, and so as we can see that about 13% of everybody over here has had some poor CDN performance. Some of them, another 15% say sometimes, and 33% very rarely, if at all. So you're talking 26%, a quarter of all people who are currently using CDNs have suffered pretty seldom or pretty often CDN poor performance. And that's what we're trying to fix. And that's what you can fix if you have a properly managed DNS provider that can give you these features. A third of you, very rarely, if at all, have noticed it, which is good. That means you're at a CDN provider that's serving your needs right now. But like I'm saying, no CDN provider has had 100% uptime regionally all around every single region around the world for the last several years. And 39% of you haven't used a CDN yet, but as we talked about in the last poll, a lot of you are looking to start using CDN. So that's good to know. All right, so I think everyone should be seeing my screen now. So when you talk about the multiple CDN layout, a lot of times people look into the idea of offering multiple CDNs, and they'll start seeing that, okay, it's very, very expensive, right? These multiple CDN solutions cost significantly more than the CDNs do themselves. So I'm just going to choose, a more expensive CDN provider where I feel like I get everything set up. Some people say it's really hard to set up and maintain, right? And that may be true, depending upon what your DNS provider is. It may be very hard to set up, and it's very hard to actually know what's the insights and what's the actual why are decisions being made? Is it being transparent? And that's one thing that if you're a user of DNS Made Easy and Constellix, everything is transparent. Our billing is transparent. Our queries are transparent. You see exactly where your queries are coming from. If you looked at our webinars in the last few weeks, you'll see that now we give the real-time logging ability where users can actually view the logs coming into our name servers in real time. We're the only provider in the industry to offer such a thing. So as you start gathering this data in real time, you're talking about analytics for your website. Can you make the decisions in real time in deciding which providers I should be using? So how hard is that to set up, and can I see that? And also, does it require an extra DNS lookup? Does that slow everything down? And a quick explanation of the DNS lookup is this. Sometimes when you get a multiple CDN provider, you say, okay, this is my domain name, example.com, and I'm on www.example.com, and it goes to an FQDN of the multiple CDN provider. And then that would then be another CNAME to the regional provider in that area. But when your DNS provider supports this, and I'm talking to DNS provider, we're going to look on how Constellix supports it inside our infrastructure. You can actually choose directly within each region to respond to that CDN. So you're saving that extra lookup. Now, does this extra lookup actually hurt you? Does it actually cause a problem with any of the solutions or anything like that? It's really not going to be a big lookup, but it is going to be an extra could be, depending what DNS vendor you use, it could be an extra 20, 30, 40 milliseconds, depending upon what DNS vendor the multi-CDN provider uses. So that can actually add to the lookup idea, and you don't really need that. A lot of people, they steer away from multiple CDNs because they believe that's always the case, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen if you have a DNS provider that supports a multi-CDN infrastructure. So I got one last poll here until we get to near the end of the thing, is anyone out there that is currently using CDNs, and this is the last poll we're going to have for a while, are you using currently more than one CDN? And think about this as in DDoS protection, WAF, PCI compliance, or anything like that. Is this something we're using multiple vendors for at this time? And just let us know. So I'm going to let this poll go for a couple more seconds. And this is important to know because if you're currently already doing this, the question is, how are you doing this? And are you doing this efficiently? Are you monitoring for it? And are you gathering, the correct sort of feedback that you need to? And are you getting the analytics that you need in order for your organization to be successful? So, all right, let me close this poll and let's see get the results here. So very few are using multiple CDNs. I guarantee you that the ones who are not, once we go through this tutorial and webinar today, you're going to see how easy it is to set up within Constellix and run with it. And then some of you have never thought about it, but at least this webinar will kind of show you how it's done and how it's implemented. So I'm going to hide the results. You can see my screen again. So you can see how we're in Constellix, we're going to respond to the proper CDN in the particular region that's fastest for that CDN who's having the best performance at that time. So another big step in offering a CDN service, right, or using a CDN service or using a multiple CDN service is the A-name records. Now, DNS Made Easy, we support the A-name record. So if you're just using a single CDN provider, DNS Made Easy will do it well. You can do A-name records for that. I actually recommend all people to use the A-name records in Constellix. It's a much more granular geolocation-specific A-name lookup. What we do in DNS Made Easy is we monitor for the record changing, for the IPs changing, we update the records behind the scenes. In Constellix, what we've done is regionally at each POP, we do the lookup in real time, and then we respond back with the proper A record. Now, we have many webinars back previously to talk about A-name records. I don't want to get into such great detail today, but what I'll say real quickly is that A-name records are used when you want to use a CDN provider or a DDoS protection provider or WAF or PCI compliance, something like that, and you can't use the CNAME. So where is that done? Well, it's done at the root record, right? When you have example.com, and when it's nothing in front of it, you can't use a CNAME. You need to use an A-name record. Or it's done when you want to use other record types as well. For instance, if you want to have a TXT record, if you want to have an MX record, when you want to have a different record type at that same namespace, you cannot use a CNAME that breaks DNS RFCs. So what DNS Made Easy is one of the first ones to offer the A-name record. We've implemented that also in Constellix. And if you're going to be using CDNs, you want to make sure properly you're going to run into cases where you need to use the A-name records. So if your DNS provider is not supporting that, you're obviously limited right there, and you won't be able to use the CDN efficiently. So let's talk about a multiple CDN infrastructure, right? Let's say we have two CDNs and we want to split the traffic 50-50. And this is the basic use case, right? This is something really simple. We've done webinars about this before, where you just create what's called a pool, right, inside Constellix, and we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. But we're gonna create two different CDNs, CDN 1 and CDN 2. We're gonna split the traffic 50-50, and then half the time it's gonna go to CDN 1, half the time it's gonna go to CDN 2. So that's the simplest thing when both CDNs are properly routing traffic and their speeds are both optimized. Now, in a multiple CDN infrastructure, you want to make sure you're constantly monitoring for that CDN, right? If one CDN goes down, you don't want that to be answered 50% of the time anymore. So now you're starting to talk about, now we need to start monitoring the CDNs. We need to make sure that the CDNs are actually performing properly, they're not down. So I don't want my users to go to half the time to get to a down site. So monitoring starts becoming a big part. So that's a big thing that we're going to talk about. In Constellix, we obviously have the Sonar application, which does all the interactive monitoring for you. And then the next level, of course, is our internet traffic optimization. So the internet traffic optimization, we call ITO, it takes all that logic of the load balancing, the next level integrated network monitoring, and we use that to make these decisions in real time. And we're going to do a quick demo of this in a little bit. I'm just curious, we have several hundred people online today, so I just want to know real quickly how many of you have currently used ITO pools, if any at all. I'm thinking most people in this webinar haven't used. We're trying to market this to people who have not used ITO pools before. So I'm just curious on the results of this. And I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to look at it. And what ITO pools are, internet traffic optimization pools are, is allows you to do things that start breaking out of DNS RFCs, right? You're no longer bound by the limits of, you can't do usually two CNAMEs for the same namespace. That's what you use a pool for. You can't do unequal weights in round robining. That's what you'd use a pool for. And now also you can't do performance based to choosing which one's actually acting better in each region. And that's what we're going to use pools for. We kind of keep everything that's outside of DNS RFCs in pools. So let me close out this pool real quickly. And as we can see here, and this is what I thought, not many people are actually using pools right now. Very few % have actually played around with it. Some people meant to, but currently a lot of people aren't even using Constellix yet. So this would be a good overview of some of the Constellix services and platforms at the same time that kind of run through some of the features that we've been working on here at the DNS Made Easy headquarters, and we can talk about a lot of those things. So what does ITO? How does it work? And that's kind of the brains behind all this multiple CDN infrastructure. So number one, we talked about the monitoring. We're going to need to monitor where the CDNs are performing, if they're up, if they're down, and how fast are they working, right? Secondly, we want to optimize this, right? If one CDN is working better than another, right? What we want to do is automatically change the CDN that we're giving to that region, right? So let's say in a particular region, a CDN provider has a client that's getting a real large DDoS attack, right? It's flooding their lines, everything's going through the mitigation services, everything starts slowing down. Well, you're noticing their speeds are going to start slowing down as well. So why wouldn't you use another CDN provider that's going to get faster speeds, right? And that's the best part about this service, all right, and this technology, is that we're going to be looking continuously at which DDoS protection providers, CDN providers, and all that stuff, and how they're optimized, and it's going to give your organization the best results you want in each region. And then the last step of ITO, of course, is our DNS updates, right? We're going to be making these DNS updates in real time. As I think most of our users online today are Constellix or DNS Made Easy users. You realize that our updates are immediate, right? 16 years ago when I wrote the original DNS Made Easy, I wrote this Peregrine Instant DNS Update System, which updates these thousands of, at the time it was only a couple hundred name servers. Now we have thousands of name servers around the world, and we make these updates so fast that we could update all these systems around the world. We use the exact same technology in Constellix as we did in DNS Made Easy. So we're constantly making these changes and updating these systems really fast around the world. Throughout the years, we've had to change the technology behind the scenes. Everything was magnetic disk back in 2003. And nowadays, everything's on SSDs because we're making so many updates so fast. So as we keep going through it. So this is how ITO, you think about the brain of the whole entire idea and how it works. Monitoring is a huge piece of it. Optimizing is a huge piece of it. And then our DNS updates are huge. So we're gonna talk about how those are all done within Constellix using the record pools. All right, so CDN optimization within ITO. So you now have, let's go back to our original diagram here. And now when we put ITO in the mix, we're going to say that CDN 1's responding in that region at 9 milliseconds, CDN 2 is responding at 4 milliseconds. So obviously for that region, we want to give our users CDN 2, right? This is not rocket scientists. This is, as I tell my little children, open alligator mouth, close alligator mouth, right? Slower speeds, smaller times, serve it to the user, right? Very not hard. The challenge comes in, how do you update it regionally? How do you take it out when it goes down? How do you just make those updates for those users in that particular region of the world? All right, and the overall goal with ITO is to give all the individual users their prospective fastest CDN provider, right? And it gives them which one they're moving fastest. I'm kind of restating it, so I'm going to skip over this real quickly. So what are the benefits? So the benefits of internet traffic optimization can be slashing your load times, right? Now you're just not going to be locked to one CDN provider. There's currently the DDoS or CDN providers out there that say, give us everything, put everything under one roof, put all your eggs in one basket, and you're totally bound by their responsiveness. Number one, you're dealing with their support for all your problems through DNS, DDoS, WAF, you name it. It's slow. You know, some of the more larger CDN providers and DDoS providers out there have slow CDNs. They often give the wrong pages at times or error pages to the users, and you get just an overall bad performance for your users. What we could do here with multiple CDNs, you start removing those slow load times and choosing the fastest performer, fastest service provider regionally. You can also build your own CDN now, right? You can put your own CDN in there to offset some of the costs that you may have. Let's say you have extra bandwidth you're not using in several of your POPs, right? But you only have POPs in one region of the world. Well, now you can just put your CDN in that one region of the world and use another distributed worldwide CDN everywhere else, right? And it also gets really, really affordable. You're not paying these high costs of, hey, I'm the most expensive CDN provider, so I must be the best. That's ridiculous. As we know, even with DNS services, just because you're the most expensive doesn't mean you're the best. It means that you're the most expensive and you're paying someone a sales commission, right? It's got to be heavily integrated with GeoDNS. You're going to get the most regional stuff. You're going to avoid the outages, and it's really simple and easy to manage, right? So let's talk about a use case over here. And this is a use case where you can actually do a whole bunch of different combinations. In this one, we only have 2 different CDN providers. CDN A is going to be the fastest, and it had recent outages in Europe, but it's fast in US West, and it's also fast in Asia Pac and Oceania regions, right? CDN B is slow in Asia Pac, you know, it has no POPs in Oceania whatsoever, right? So obviously it's going to be slow there. And it's fast in just the US East and the US West, but it's not fast in Europe. Or it is fast in Europe, excuse me. So what you want to do is you want to split the traffic 50-50 in US West, right? You want to give all the traffic to one CDN provider in US East. You want to do all the traffic in Europe, and you want to choose you know, one other CDN provider for Asia Pacific and Oceania. Maybe you want to do this for budgetary reasons, right? Different CDN providers charge different amounts where the bandwidth is located, right? So maybe you want to say, you know what, in Asia Pacific, I want to choose between these 3 different CDN DDoS providers, but everywhere else, or Asia Pacific, in Oceania, I want to do that, but everywhere else, I want to use these different CDN providers, right? Or maybe this CDN provider is really popular in Asia Pacific. They can handle the DDoS traffic there really well. I want to use them just in this region, and I don't want to use them everywhere else. And having a DNS vendor that understands these complexities in your configurations really gives you the freedom to help your organization grow. And it's not going to be expensive, and it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. And you don't have to send in, you know, and speak hours to a sales associate to try to figure it all out. We're going to set up one right here really quickly. I'm going to show you how easy it is. All right, so here we go. We're going to do a quick little live demo here. And so what I want to do now is let me actually, I'm going to keep that there, and I'm going to log into a couple sites here. One quick second. And like I'm saying, if anyone has any questions during the demo, I'm going to try to run through the questions a little later on, and we can go through everything with everybody. I'm going to save myself all the logging in. Alrighty, here we go. Let me bring my window up over here. Let me expand this. I'm guessing everyone is still seeing my window. I hope you are. I'm going to do a quick check to make sure that you are. I'm going to do a quick check to make sure you're seeing my window. All right, rock and roll. All right, good. All right, so one of the CDN providers that I actually use for several of the websites that we use internally here at Tiggy is StackPath. And so I'm going to show you getting the information from StackPath, and I'm going to show you being integrated with StackPath, Amazon CloudFront, Key CDN, and CDN 7.7, right? Those are 4 of the larger CDN providers slash DDoS providers. They offer WAF, PCI compliance. A lot of them have different combinations of features that you can enable. And so I'm going to show you putting StackPath into a configuration. So I created my StackPath test over here, and what you see that I manage my. I am going to go in here. Hopefully it loads for me. You can see that I created a CDN for a little small website. So I have a website called it's called beach.server.us, but the origin is right here. So this is just I took this off a free template and I downloaded it and I installed it. So it's nothing. I just, took me 2 seconds. It's just a free template I found online on one of the online things. So you can see that's the website. And so that's where it's going to be grabbing the content from, the beach origin. I'm asking for beach.server.us, and this is the FQDN they gave me. Now, usually inside DNS Made Easy and Constellix right now, that's what you would use to create your CNAME or your ANAME record, and you're done, right? It's one CDN provider. All my eggs are in one basket. I'm kind of relying on this CDN provider to being up all the time. But what we're going to do now is we're going to change this around. We're going to put this into a multiple CDN infrastructure and show you how it's done. So the first thing I want to do, of course, is I'm going to add that. I'm going to take this URL and I'm going to go into our my Constellix monitoring. You're going to see I have some checks here already, but I'm going to add a quick check here. Obviously, for users that have just used DNS Made Easy before, everything's done inside DNS Made Easy. In Constellix, we have 2 separate applications. We actually have 4 separate applications, but we were going to use the Sonar application to create our checks. It gives you our historical evidence, our virtual trace routes, and everything like that. And at the same time, it's going to provide us all of our historical and analytics that we're going to use that we can go back and verify why we're making decisions. So I'm going to say, okay, StackPath Asia Pacific. I'm going to put the host name that I want to monitor. And then now, because I'm going to make this just for the Asia Pacific region, what I want to do, and you can make this as granular as you want, right? I'm going to do this just for regions right now. If you wanted to, you could just check in India and you can say, okay, users in India choose the fastest CDN provider, right? You can have all that sort of complexity, but I'm going to show you a real quick one here. I'm going to say, okay, Asia Pacific. Close that, and I'm going to monitor every 30 seconds. I'm going to do once per site. So from those, I'm going to do every 30 seconds. I'm going to be hitting one of these. If I did all of them at once, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then pretty much it'd be one every 6 seconds. Even be a little bit faster. But also, more checks you do, the more cost it incurs in Sonar. But still, the Sonar pricing is the lowest in the industry. I could choose here who I want to contact. If the CDN goes up and down, I'm going to skip over that right now. And over here, I'm just going to put in the FQDN that I want to pass into the host header, right? So when I access this, I want to make sure I'm passing in beach.server.us. It's like the virtual host, right? I'm passing that into the host header to make sure I'm getting the right information. So I'm going to do a quick little check to make sure that, yep, it's working, so I can verify it. So I'm going to save that. So I created the one check. Let me just start that check right now. And then as I go in here, I'm going to just clone these real quickly. And I'm going to make one for different regions around the world. So we're going to do one for Europe. And now only thing I have to do is turn this off and turn on Europe, right? And close. And I always like to run a quick check to make sure it's fine. Everything else is already set because I cloned it. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go in Europe. I'm going to clone this one. And I'm going to call this one Oceania. Oop, clicked on the wrong one. And so now all I'm doing is I'm creating my regional checks for you automatically. I'm trying to make sure everything's always looking good. And actually, I could just run the check directly from here, run it right from Sydney and see it performing. So there, see Sydney response. And let me save this. So I got one for Asia Pacific, one for Europe, one for Oceania. So now I just want to hit the United States up a little bit, or North America. So let me say US East. And so I'm making you could tell I'm making my decisions based upon regional averages. You could do them as specific as you want. It just takes a little more configurations. For the simplicity of this webinar, I just want to get this done really fast. And now I'm going to go in here and clone it and do one for US West. So now what I'm doing is I created, let me go here, and I'll give you a quick little rundown. US West, close, make sure everything's working, looking good, save. All right, so what I've done real quickly is I created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different checks in 5 different regions I care about, right? So I'm going to put everyone in Asia Pacific. They're all going to be monitoring there. And then I got Europe, Oceania, US East, and US West. And so as I am going to be gathering data, so US West didn't come back, you can always click here and see a snapshot of where the performance is, right? So you have the DNS lookup time. This would be the normal DNS lookup time of that one CNAME lookup, and then we have the response time of the web server. And so you can see here, if we go to different CDN providers, as they come in, we're doing once every 30 seconds. So you can see this one's 21 seconds ago, a minute ago, and 45, right? So they're spread out 30 seconds apart. You can see we get the different response times for the different regions. And so if I go back to the StackPath, and so Europe was one of the first ones we did, we say we're bringing in that data, right? So we now have information from Netherlands, from Austria, and 2 pops in London, right? So we're gathering all this data and we're starting to calculate the differences based upon it. So this is going to be going, we're doing these checks, we're doing 1 check per location from all the different regions, right? And so that's how easy it is to set it up. And you see I added StackPath in here. You can see I already have one. I did this earlier today. I added one for Key CDN. I added the same thing for Amazon. You can see here, everything, the only thing that's different is my FQDN that I'm monitoring, right? And I did another one for CDN 77. Right, so I've created these. We pretty much now have 20 checks in here in Sonar. Real quickly, if you haven't seen Sonar before, it gives you the averages. You can do you know, all the different speed and performance. You can look at the outliers. You can look at your raw data. I think that's, let me go and you can actually see all the different locations. London, you can do it, find out if anything was up or down. I don't think we're going to show down. There's nothing down right now. Everything was up. We also added recently some more trace route information for you. You can bring that information in there and see it. This shows you where the last outage was and when it was and how long it was down for. So you can tell that, you know, regionally in Europe, Key CDN, when we're monitoring it in 9 minutes. And this is probably when I first set it up. I actually set it up on Saturday, so that makes sense. When I first set it up, it wasn't provisioned yet. And so it took a little longer to provision. So it kind of goes through everything. But that's kind of how the Constellix works. If you want to go back, if you want to get a demo of Constellix, let us know. We have multiple webinars on Constellix Sonar that kind of walk through it. So my next step, though, is I now have this FQDN from StackPath, and I want to use this in my my implementation inside DNS. So inside my DNS interface, let me go into my domain name here. You're going to see that, you know, I have all these domains for these different test CDNs I'm creating. But what I want to do is regionally, you know, in Europe, I wanted to use the highest performing CDN. So you can see right now for the root record, I have an A name, but for beach, I have, you know, a regular CNAME record. So, and the CNAME is pointing to a pool, CDN Performance Europe. So I'm going to go into, and these are where the pools are created. I'm going to go into Europe, and you're going to see here that this is the StackPath. I'm now going to say, okay, within Amazon, and this is for Europe, so I'm going to enable my internet traffic optimization. I'm going to say, give me my performance feeds from Europe. And now for each one of these, I want to make sure that I have the fastest performing one in Europe. And I got to make sure I have my Europe one in there. So let me go Europe. This is my CDN provider for Europe. And I don't see my one for Amazon. So what I'm going to do, actually, let me go and fix that. I don't see that one in there. So let me go into Sonar. I want to get this perfectly set up and find my one for Amazon. And I have Asia Pac, Oceania, US. I do not have one for Europe. So what I want to do is call this one. Just create a new one real quickly. Add a web check, and I'm going to call it AWS for beach server US Europe. Let me put my Europe one in there, and I want to choose all of Europe. So that's one I obviously missed when I was creating my reports earlier. Advanced beach.server.us. Make sure that still works. Yep. All right, save this. All right, so now that I added that check into Sonar, you're now going to see that I now see Europe here. There we go. So now we have Europe, CDN 777. I want to use the Europe speeds for that. Key CDN, I would like to use my Europe speeds for there. And in StackPath, I want to use Europe speeds there. So obviously, I have the same CDN set up at 4 different providers. I'm going to choose my Sonar checking are coming from all Europe. I'm using the Europe checks. I'm going to enable ITO, and I'm going to make sure that I only want to choose the locations that are coming from Europe, right? I'm going to save this. Click here, commit the changes. I'm going to say enabled ITO. Save. All right. Perfect. All right, so Europe is all set. On the West Coast, okay, this one I don't have StackPath. So let me go back into here. Let me grab that StackPath FQDN. And I'm going to add another host. Obviously, with normal DNS providers, you are not allowed to do multiple names at the same CNAME. We can do that here. So you can see these I already have set up. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to enable, this one's the West Coast. So I did some of this earlier to try to save you this walking through. So this obviously now on the West Coast, I'm going to enable the internet traffic optimization, and I'm going to choose the different checks for it to match regionally. I'm going to save these checks. That was West. Let me do Oceania. Apply these changes. And the East Coast. Oops. All right. And last one would be Asia Pacific region. So obviously I just created one for each particular region that I care about. I'm using larger regions. You can be as granular as you want. If you want to do it just for particular people in different states, you can do that too. And I'm going to show you what we're adding in the future pretty soon as well. This one's Asia Pacific. Save. All right, click here. Commit changes. All right, I'm going to save the notes there. All right, so you can see I now have ITO enabled on all of my different pools. So each pool obviously has their own, all these FQDNs are the same across all the different CDN providers, but I'm just pulling in the results for the areas. So we can see over here, if you look in Asia Pacific, right now key CDN is the fastest one from our monitoring nodes. And I'm choosing the fastest performing one right here. If I notice that I'm always getting 2 that are pretty close, I can change it to the fastest performing 2. And then we'll split it 50-50, right? Now, I don't know, many of you have seen the ITO pools before. This gives you your deviation allowance, so it's got to be at least a 10% gain or loss for it to change. You're not constantly making these changes behind the scenes. If you want it to be really slow, then you can make it a much larger. I'm just setting it as 10%. So right now, it would need to be another 16, so about 182. It would need to, something would need to be 16 faster. This would need to drop to about 150 if this was to stay at 166, right? It needs to be a 10% gain or loss from the lowest. So that tells you your deviation allowance. This monitoring frequency is how often the DNS application is going to be asking Sonar to say, hey, give me all your average speeds, which CDN is currently performing the fastest. So we're monitoring, we're asking Sonar every 30 seconds right now as well to say, okay, every 30 seconds, which one's the fastest in this region? And then we're going to make the DNS update immediately. So if we look at this, Asia Pacific is preferring key CDN. On the East Coast of the United States, I'm also using key CDN, but a little bit closer. On Oceania, I'm also using key CDN. Okay, everyone's kind of preferring key CDN right now. On the West Coast, okay, I'm using Amazon. Amazon's a little bit faster over there right now. Not by, okay, and see, so this is a deviation allowance. So CDN 7.7 technically is actually the fastest right now, but because this was faster before, this wasn't 10% faster than it, so it's currently staying. So CDN 7.7 at this 30-second check fell below, but it wasn't low enough for it to be 10% lower. So it's staying at CloudFront. And then we have Europe over here, which is using key CDN. So we're not going to see a big distribution, but obviously as the speeds change all around, you're going to see different performance gains and stuff like that. And so then inside the domains, inside server.us, you're going to see that I'm now going to have, in Europe, I'm using that same CNAME, and here's beach.performance right here. So you can see I'm using the exact same performance. So this I'm using the CDN performance for Europe. Inside US East, I'm using the CDN performance for the East Coast. So I'm using the appropriate pool for that region if I wanted to, and set it up. So now that everything's in place, if I go to a DNS tool to check where everything's mostly going to be key CDN. Actually, let me switch this to CNAME so we can see the actual thing. So most of it's going to be key CDN. You can see that we're getting Los Angeles on the West Coast because that was faster over there in Amazon. And obviously these resolvers are all over the place. Maybe I can get a reload and get different resolvers. So now I kind of broke their tool. So now it's using key CDN everywhere. I got nothing actually on the West Coast. But you can see I want to hopefully get one of these CDNs to work faster somewhere else. Let me see if I can do something. Here's what I can do. So let's say we had key CDN have an outage. I'm gonna fake an outage over here. So I'm gonna go into the key CDN US East Coast, and I am going to can't change these. Let me change. I want to, so this is on, okay, Asia Pac. So what I want to do is, let me go to key CDN East Coast, and let me actually turn these off and have all the monitoring. And I'm just going to change where it's monitoring from to choose where regionally providers are slower. And let me do simultaneous, do once per site. All right, so now what I want to do, that was on the East Coast, right? Did I mess that up? Yeah. So we're going to start getting data on the East Coast for this. And what I want to do here, let me make sure that I have that. I want to, key CDN obviously is performing better than the rest of them are right now. And that's doing good. All right. So hopefully I get some data here soon. That's US East. And it's going to start gathering. It's got to start getting data next 30 seconds. And now what I want to do, hopefully, is make the US East speeds going to be a little bit slower for it. That's my goal over here, once it starts reporting back some data. So then when I go back in here, and I go to manage, and I go to my pools, what I'm hoping to find, there it is, CDN 7.7 is now the fastest on the East Coast. Key CDN's all kind of out. And so if I go over here now and do a true, this is all cached. Let me do a better tool. Sonar Light. Constellix.com. All right, so I'm going to check. I'm going to do a DNS lookup for beach.server.us. I'm going to ask for the CNAME, and I'm going to ask a Google name server in New York. So a Google name server in New York, I'm going to run it, and you see it's running CDN 77, right? And if I hit a Google name server in London, let's see if we get data here. This is running the queries ad hoc. I think I broke my tool. We are not monitoring properly in London. One second. We do in Frankfurt, we're using CDN, right? So as we hit Google DNS regionally, we're getting different results based upon what's actually the best performing based upon ITO. So this is actually, I mean, Sonar Light's probably the best lookup tool. We allow you to choose, what name server you want to query. If you want to query an open DNS name server in Frankfurt, Germany, you can do that as well. Run the DNS lookup. You can see it's running CDN. And if I was to hit an open DNS name server in, let's say, Seattle, Washington, I think that should also probably be CDN right now. No, that's using Amazon. Remember we said Amazon's the fastest on the West Coast. So we hit open DNS in Seattle. That's hitting there. If we hit it in Los Angeles, it's also Amazon, right? And so if we want to hit Google DNS on Los Angeles, right, it's Amazon. But if we went back and we hit it in the East Coast, we hit out of, let's say, New York, we're now using CDN 77, right? So this tool is a little more accurate than the what's my DNS is, obviously. We're actually hitting in real time these queries. There's no caching involved, where we're able to say, okay, where is Google? What is Google pointed to where? And that totally monitors, and it totally does exactly what we're showing in our performance over here. Whereas the East Coast, CDN 77, yeah, this is using the world average. It's really slow now. Remember, we made this really slow because we did everything out of Oceania. So what we're doing here is that we're choosing which ones are fastest performing in particular regions for you. So this is really useful. StackPath, does DDoS protection services. Amazon does DDoS protection services. You're now able to choose the fastest performing DNS and DDoS protection service you want to regionally, which is really huge. So that's kind of a little bit of the demo. I know I kind of went through a lot of it really fast. If you ever have any questions about how to implement it, you can. What I want to show you real quickly, and this is where my staff goes nuts, is I'm going to show you what we're doing in the future for you. So remember all those steps where I was setting up the sonar tools and everything like that? So what we're going to have really soon is you can just do that right here. So you can create your CDN resource. You can choose the different providers you want. We're going to be implementing with StackPath, CDN 77, Amazon, and CDN. Those are the first four we're going to be implementing with. You enter in your API keys right in the, just like we are with anything else. You go in here and you enter your API keys, and then you would just implement this. And what this will automatically do is it will automatically create the sonar checks for you. It's automatically going to create the pools for you, and it integrates everything all together. And all you need to do is just configure it all. And then you go into your domains, and you go into your server.us, and you would just say, okay, I want to configure my CDN or apply my CDN, and then it would automatically do that for you. So let me review my changes here and commit this change. We had some extra checks in there I disabled. So this is an internal testing thing. So that's the next step that we're doing with the integration. But for right now, one thing that we have the full multi-CDN infrastructure, but we're moving to the next step to making things a little bit easier for you. So that's going to take us back to our slides here. where you know, what's next, what's coming up. So we're going to be, that the part that I just showed you right now is where we're going to be, sorry about that, everybody. Let me go back to my what's next. So the integrated CDN providers, that's the next step that we're going to be adding to this, where we're automatically going to be integrating with you know, the main CDN providers out there that are cost-effective solutions that are giving you the best of breed technologies you can use. You can use the fastest CDN providers everywhere else. A part of it too is going to be the RUM analytics. So now, instead of just getting the data from our synthetic checks from our hosting facilities, right, we're now going to allow you to put a script up on your site that's going to pull down a picture from this CDN, pull down a picture from the same picture from, or a resource, could be a JavaScript library or whatever. So what it's going to do is going to pull down the same picture from, or a resource from the 4, 5, 6, 10 different CDNs you want, right? And then we're going to use that data to say which CDNs are fastest for your users, correct? So now you're saying on the East Coast United States, if you're coming from a Verizon cell phone, you want to use this CDN. If you're coming from a Verizon landline, you want to use this CDN. If you're coming from a T-Mobile cell phone, you want to use this CDN. So that's when we're putting in the RUM analytics. That should be coming out in the next couple months as well. We're integrating all this stuff with our DNS analytics. If you looked at our recent webinars, we're doing a lot of tracking on the queries coming in to early detect DDoS traffics. We're giving you the real-time logging and analytics about that. We're going to be integrating that with page performance speed times of your users based upon the RUM data. And then finally, we're going to have the Constellix community, right? We're gathering all this data from all these different users, monitoring all these different CDN providers, looking at the visual trace routes of everything. So we're automatically going to know when providers are having issues or not. So you may not want to do the monitoring, but you can say, okay, I want to use the data from the Constellix community instead of my own active monitoring. I want to just use what's the best of breed Constellix community monitoring. So that's the future of ITO. That's the future of internet traffic optimization. It's groundbreaking stuff, just like our real-time analytics that no one else does before. No one's doing these features right now as well, the way we plan on doing them, and we're excited to show them to you all. So that is the future. And now, you know, as the pun is, the queries for the day. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I will try to hit up as many of them as I can right now. So I'm going to go look through these right now and go through them. Okay, so one user asked, the CDN providers offer different mechanism for protected links, protected URLs for different CDN providers look completely different. How do we handle this? And I kind of showed you how you'd handle that. Each CDN provider has a unique URL, and so we can monitor that URL differently. So let me go back over here, right? So if I wanted to go into, for instance, this one, right? And if I go, actually it'd be quicker if I go here. So let me go into this. So if I went to the Amazon CloudFront one, and you can obviously copy the data, do it right in your browser, the webinar's live, I'm going to get this data, right? And then if I go in here, right, I'm going to get the same data. So what we're going to do, right now that's what we're doing from all the synthetic checks. What we're going to do with RUM is I'm going to say, okay, I'm just going to do a quick example, copy image address. So this is what it's going to look like, right? So I'm going to grab that there, and then I'm going to do in RUM, it's going to grab that data, and then it's going to grab this data, and so it's going to grab all your users are going to be grabbing. You want to choose a small asset, of course. It's going to grab all this data in real time from all your different CDN providers, and then you're going to have all the data in front of you, right? With inside Sonar, you're going to know exactly which users, why we're making these decisions. Not some mystery little thing we're going to show behind the scenes and you're not going to understand it. You can always go into it any time and view the data, view exactly where the data is coming from, looking at where the data is. You can get the raw data to understand all of it. Nothing's hidden inside Sonar or inside Constellix or even DNS Made Easy. We always show you all your data. A lot of the other providers out there kind of hide everything. Oh, we think this one's faster. In reality, the same venture capitalist that's paying for the monitoring is paying for the DNS service, and they're going to, you know, fudge the results. We don't do that at Tiggy here. We make sure everything's legitimate, and so you feel honest with your decisions. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, so this user mentioned that multiple CDNs are very common to commit to a specific amount of traffic per month. With Constellix, you're able to set limits. Having IDO switch, the best performing CDN may push set limit. And then it depends what your CDN provider is. I'll be honest with you. You don't need to go to expensive CDN providers. Just like, I mean, I don't have my sales staff try to sell you everyone on a $60,000 DNS package, and I'll take you out to a steak dinner. I'll sell it to you for $59.95, right? The same thing. If you look at the pricing for a lot of the CDN providers, they have different tiers, but you can obviously work with them, and all these most of these are usually negotiable. But even like StackPath, it's a hassle-free service. You choose which one you want to use, how many sites you want, and as it scales up. So you don't. I mean, if they're penalizing you for growing, you're choosing the wrong provider, right? You're choosing like our competitors in DNS, right? We're going to charge you $80,000 for DNS, and you get one query over, we're going to charge you another $100,000. I mean, that's not it, right? If you look at DNS Made Easy and Constellix, you grow, we want your price gets cheaper. With Constellix, as you add more domains, it gets cheaper. With DNS Made Easy, as you add more queries, it gets cheaper, right? Everything, if you're choosing a CDN provider that penalizes you for growing, you're choosing the wrong provider, people. You're in the sales jargon where the people, they got done selling cars and now they're selling IT services. You don't need to fall for that. Just buy services that grow with your company. That's my biggest suggestion. And I'm a big fan of, that's why we have no sales staff here. What you need to monitor a CDN, I talked about that. All right, perfect. Okay, can I combine ITO with GeoDNS when CDN1 is slow in region A but fast in CDN B and opposite? Yes, I think we showed that and how that could be possible. Obviously, you can do more region-specific things as well excuse me, when I'm to start filtering. Within Constellix, you actually have your filters, right? So you can do region-specific filters. You can do, by ASN. That's how we're going to power a lot of the ITO decisions in the future. We're going to do regionally. All these ASNs are faster with this CDN, and all of these CDNs, all of these ASNs, autonomous system networks, those are networks, are faster with this CDN. And that's going to give you all that sort of a hindsight in figuring out what's the fastest one regionally. And you can then say, okay, I'm going to make something specific, right? I really care about my users. Most of my users are in, New York State. So, I want to just make a filter just for them. So you'd go in North America and you would say, okay, I want to go into the United States. And then you would say, okay, I just want the people in New York, right? And then now you're making a filter on that, and you can give them the fastest performing just for them based upon the sonar checks that you integrate with. So that's that. So that answers that question. Are name records proprietary in DNS Made Easy or an industry standard? They're not proprietary. We do own the domain name anamerecord.com because we came up with the name. We came up with the idea of it. A lot of other companies, just like everyone else does, they copy everyone else in the industry. DNS Made Easy is one of the first one to offer DNS failover in the industry. Everyone else has kind of copied that as well. They still charge a lot more for it. I don't know why, but no, a lot of other companies charge it. Sometimes some DNS service providers call them alias records, but that gets confused with CNAME records. But Amazon does it themselves because they offer, most CDN companies will want you to use their DNS services because they feel like, they can offer that sort of, that extra level. You don't, like I'm saying, you don't need that though. You don't need to use you don't want to use this DNS service of your CDN provider, your DDoS provider, and you're locked into one provider. They start having issues, you're down. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. That's one thing that we really pride ourselves here is in technology. We might not have a sales staff. We might not have the large conferences and parties and stuff like that. But when it comes to performance, we rock. If you look at the recent Solve DNS Made Easy is number 1, Constellix is number 2. Everyone else is far down the list. These guys will even charge you and let's say they're the most optimal. And this is obviously monitoring from the major markets around the world. I know there's a couple markets we're not in, but this is, United States, Europe, Asia Pac, and Oceania. You're not going to get a service provider that's any faster than us. Okay. Software industry contract usually offer better rates than splitting the traffic of multiple providers, and the base fee and worse rates per gig. Everybody would say the most expensive, not a bust. Okay, so this user is saying that a multiple CDN provider is expensive and it's not a busted term. That may be so, but in reality, you can probably negotiate better rates. That's all I spend most of my day now isn't development. It's haggling with pricing with different vendors and stuff like that. And yeah, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you will get a cheaper rate, right? But at the same time, they're not going to be competitive, right? It's just like, if I go to any of my vendors, my bandwidth vendors and stuff like that, the new user, right, always gets a better rate than the existing customer, right? I'm sure if you guys are in this industry, you know how I feel, right? Some guy off the street gets a better rate than a customer that's been with you for 5 or 6 years because they see new business, right? And so you always got to do that whole thing. Oh, I'm going to threaten to pull my plug and pull my business from you guys, right? Just to get pricing that's somewhat competitive. So the same thing with anything. The CDN providers that I use, yeah, you do see that you are going to get a little better performance in pricing if you grow within that one vendor. But in reality, are you looking to save a couple of dollars? You're looking for better performing service, right? You can get the better performing service by choosing cost-effective CDN services, right? That aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg, that aren't going to be, $40,000 to $50,000 upfront fees and a line item for DNS of $6,000 a month, right? You're not going to see that with some of these other CDN providers, and you can still get a better performing CDN DDoS product than you can if you went with one really expensive provider. I'm not going to name names. I don't want to deal with the lawsuits, but you guys know who I'm talking about. So that's that. But Daniel, that was a great comment. And if you want to reach out to me, Daniel, on LinkedIn, feel free, and we could chat. We could talk on the phone. All right, we got a couple of people saying thanks. All right, that's it. That's all the questions I got here. So that's good news. That's rock and roll. That was pretty simple. You guys took it easy on me today. I appreciate that. And so, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me, you can send an email to sales@constellix.com. We'll answer it there. That's what we're here for. We're excited to show you these new products and features. Once again, this is Stephen Job with DNS Media and Constellix. Thank you all very much for taking your afternoon, morning, or evening with us. And once again, I'll be making another video soon to do a recap of all this and how to configure it. But feel free to let us know if you have any questions or if you have any feature requests, something that's outside of what's on our future roadmap. Everyone, you have a wonderful, wonderful day.